Hey everyone, we're just going to give a couple seconds here to let everybody into the meeting, into our webinar. And I think we're going to be good to go. So hi everybody, my name is Brill Osman and I'm the marketing manager here at Convergence Networks. And we're really excited to do our Teams calling webinar today. It was really interesting to see we have a lot of customers on the call that already have Teams calling and are already using it. And we also have a lot of people on the call that aren't using Teams calling yet. So really excited for the types of discussions that we can have. And with that, probably the best way that this is going to go is if you have questions, to use the question and answer feature. It's on the top bar. You should see Q&A. And there you should be able to put in any questions that you have as we're going through. I'm going to be moderating the chat a bit. And if I see something that's coming through, I'll make sure to stop Kevin and ask him if it makes sense. If not, we'll also have a time at the end to ask questions as well. But I know Kevin will appreciate it if you are asking questions, if there's something you want to know. So feel free to jump in whenever. So with that, I should just mention too, I know sometimes you might not want to ask a question, I guess, with your name on it. So there is an anonymous feature. You can just click ask anonymously and we won't see who is asking the question either. So there's that feature as well. And with that, I'm going to introduce our Teams phone expert. I know kind of sounds weird to say a phone expert, but Kevin actually is a phone expert and I'm really excited to introduce him now. So I'll pass it off to Kevin.
Thanks, Brill. Appreciate it. And thank you all for attending. I see we have just a wonderful turnout here. Thank you for all taking a little time out of your day to hear a bit more about Teams calling. My name is Kevin Meeker. I'm the technical sales manager slash voice subject matter expert here at Convergence Networks. I'm one of those weird, kind of twisted individuals that actually enjoys voice and enjoys phone systems. This is something I've, as you can see on the slide here, been doing for 15 years. I love to design call flows and architect phone systems, train clients, help them to adopt new features and functionality, build customizations, really trying to make that phone system work for each individual client. I mean, as you can see, I'm really a phone dork. I mean, that really truly is my telephone number there on the screen. You're certainly welcome to call it. My cell phone would currently ring as I have it forwarded from the work phone system, but that really is my telephone number. And yes, as I said, I really truly do enjoy phones and enjoy calling. So I know I've worked with a lot of you in the past, and I look forward to exploring some of the advanced functionality. Maybe some of the things we go over today might trigger a couple of hot buttons for you. Feel free to reach out to me. If you're currently not leveraging Teams calling, of course, please reach out to your account manager, your VCIO here at Convergence. We'd be happy to set up a one-on-one to kind of go through things with you and your organization, how you might be able to leverage it to become more productive, more efficient, because it really does add some efficiencies to the phone system. So with that, I do want to kind of dive into the content here. We're going to do a big, kind of an overview of Teams calling, and I'm going to get on my soapbox here for just a minute because in the world we live in today, the value of talking to another human being seems to be reduced. And voice really does matter. Talking to someone can really clear up a lot of misconceptions, misconstrued conversations, that things that get lost in email exchanges or text exchanges, whether it's via text messaging on your cell phone or messaging through Teams. You can't get inflection, you can't get tone. Voice really does matter. And bringing that into the more modern environment, things have changed for us so much over the last 5 to 7 years or so. I mean, we're working in different environments and different places. I mean, I'll give some examples here in a little while, but I mean, I literally have one client where they're based in the Pacific Northwest, but their receptionist during the pandemic moved to Florida. Well, the receptionist is still living in Florida, and she still performs those reception duties, even though she's half of the country away from the corporate office. So, the idea of everybody reporting to work under one roof is pretty much out the window at this point. And having a phone system that's actually going to support that is something that some of us have and some of us don't. And Teams calling really does bring that together and allows you to quite literally work from anywhere. But I do want to go into some examples here about how some of our clientele has leveraged Teams calling. I mean, so here's some examples up on the screen here. I'm going to kind of touch on each one of them briefly here. We've got a healthcare organization. They have a call center. And so they're using a lot of the advanced functionality that can be brought to the table. There are add-ons and bolt-ons to Teams calling that will, provide true compliance call recording, where calls are recorded, they're stored, they're categorized. There are retention policies associated with them because this is a healthcare organization. They have certain compliances that they have to adhere to. They also can look at the reporting and analytics engines that are available to really get insights into the call patterns. When are their busy times? What time of the day and days of the week do they really get hammered with extra phone calls? They've actually started to look at this and leverage it for staffing and scheduling purposes. How can we make sure that we have enough people taking calls at the right times? And how can we not have people sitting around waiting for the phone to ring at other times? So they've really been able to leverage, the analytics and some of the information available within the Teams platform and some of the add-on functionality for the Teams calling platform. We have another organization there, in the legal space. They have multiple firms under one roof, but they have different business names, different published phone numbers, but they share a receptionist. Well, that receptionist can answer the phone appropriately just based on the caller ID information and the way we've constructed the system, where that receptionist gets a trigger on the incoming call pop-up as to which firm was called. And so she can answer the phone appropriately. Have another employment staffing firm. They're scattered they have offices all over a couple of different states here in the US. And they have some custom call routing to certain offices. They have alerting that will then roll over to other offices to take load based on, time in call queue, things of that nature. So they've got a lot of ways to back each other up. One of their offices might be slow, the other one's really busy. They can take the load from one another without really having to do anything. The system is built so that it just fails over and rolls over to different places to make sure that those callers are given the treatment that they need. We have another client that's a nonprofit, and they work with a lot of low income and disadvantaged individuals, and they've learned that the SMS capability, the actual texting capability that's available in Teams calling, has really been effective in working with that client base. And so there's just so many different things that can be leveraged within the Teams platform, within the additional apps and bolt-ons that are available for Teams. So it really comes down to how do you want to interact with your clientele? More than likely, there are ways to make it work well within the Teams platform. So with that, I want to take just a quick step back, kind of go through some of the basic terminology here. I mean, what Teams calling is it's replacing that traditional phone system or PBX with a cloud version that's hosted in Microsoft's cloud. It can be connected to from anywhere you have internet access and you're leveraging the Teams app. So, you might be using the Teams app on your smartphone. You might be using it in the web browser. You might be using the one on your PC. As long as you have some form of internet access, whether it's Wi-Fi, wired connection, 4G, 5G, you can connect to that and participate in the call routing for your company's phone system. You also don't need to maintain any hardware or servers or anything on site at your location to deal with your phone system. You also don't have to worry about phone lines anymore. So, that the mentality and the idea of that traditional premise-based phone system that sits in the closet in the back room is, to be honest, kind of antiquated at this point. And especially when the world we live in, it almost is a disadvantage because you need something that people can connect to from wherever they happen to be working at the time. I'm not going to belabor this slide, but you can see all of the various things, and this is not an exhaustive list, all the things that are available within Teams calling as far as PBX or phone system functionality. Very, very rarely do I have a client come to me and ask me to make Teams calling do something that it can't do. There may be a different way that it's done from the prior phone system, but it certainly is capable of all of the functionality that we expect from a traditional PBX. So this next slide does kind of give us a nice little picture of how this is set up. So Microsoft Teams is the PBX. It is the phone system. It does all the transfers, the auto attendance, the hunt groups, the call queues, all that stuff that we're used to as part of our phone system. The nice thing about Microsoft is they've provided various ways to bring dial tone to that PBX functionality. You can have Microsoft be your operator. They can carry your phone numbers. They have certified operator connect partners that you can leverage that are phone companies that they can then plug into the Teams client. And then you can also bring your own operator and integrate with your on-premise infrastructure if necessary. So there are different ways to bring the phone numbers to the Microsoft Teams PBX functionality. So we've actually built a system, we've branded it Convergence Rome, and it's leveraging that operator connect and direct routing capability where we've brought our own carrier to the mix. They have an incredibly reliable and resilient infrastructure. It's very secure. Our offering is fully managed. Any problems, any issues, you call us, we take care of it. We interface with the carrier for you so you don't have to. We go to great lengths to ensure that the implementation of our system is a very clean and comprehensive implementation. One of the things I've worked for telecoms in the past, one of the things they tend to traditionally fall down on is that turn up and training. They give you a portal and say, have at it and here, watch a video, this is how you use it. That's normally that's normally very insufficient for what's actually needed. We really go to great lengths to lay out your call flow, to understand what your needs are, make sure that your users understand how to interface with the system, how to leverage that Teams client to make and receive their phone calls. So again, we've built this with the PBX functionality in Microsoft, but we've brought our own carrier to the mix because we found that they're very responsive from a support perspective. They really do give us that reliability and resiliency that is needed for telephony. I don't ever want to have a conversation with a client where their main phone number can't be called. And if that does happen, I want it to be fixed in a minute or two, not hours or days. So with that, let's kind of dive into what does this look like for you and the average person using the phone. So this would add some functionality to your Teams client. If you're looking at your Teams client now, you probably have all these tabs along the side. You even have this calls tab. Those of you who aren't using Convergence Rome today are probably just missing this dial pad and your work telephone number. So this brings the calling functionality right into the Teams client that we're using for so many other purposes. We're using it for calendaring, file share, chat amongst our coworkers and colleagues. We're already spending a lot of time in our Teams client, leveraging it for its various other purposes. Folding the phone system in really gains an advantage when it comes to productivity because you're not maintaining multiple apps, you're not bouncing around. It makes it very, very easy to make and receive telephone calls. So this goes into it in a little more detail, and I'm just going to kind of bring these up as they come up. But as you can see, you've got a dial pad, you have your phone number listed. You can actually access your Outlook contacts right from your Teams client and gives you some click to dial functionality right out of that Teams client to all of the contacts that you already have established in Outlook. All of your voicemails come into a separate tab here right in this calls tab. And if you're used to it, they also come into your Outlook inbox. So if you're used to getting them that way, they still appear there as well. So it gives you a lot of very convenient features right within your Teams client.
Kevin, one question I'm thinking of when we're going through this is like, sometimes if I don't have the greatest Wi-Fi, hopefully my Wi-Fi is good right now, I'm at the office, but if you don't have a good Wi-Fi connection, sometimes when you're on just Teams, your video or audio can cut out. Is that, like, how does that work with the Teams calling?
Well, with Teams calling, it certainly still does require a quality internet connection. But in general, a phone call in Teams is going to consume far less bandwidth than a Teams meeting where we're broadcasting video as well. So in general, if you have a connection that the device that you're using for Teams can detect, it's likely enough for a telephone call because telephone calls are very low bandwidth requirements. These meetings and these video calls are tenfold the bandwidth requirement that a telephone call would be.
And then I guess one thing I wanted to ask is if everybody has, or does everybody have their own direct phone number? Like if we already have a phone number, how does that work?
Yep. As certainly everybody has their own direct dial telephone number, but we do have the ability to mask their outbound caller ID with, for example, the published number of the business. So that, just by making an outbound phone call, this person isn't giving away their direct dial. If that call gets missed, the call gets returned to the main line of the business and processed through either that main auto attendant or reception. It doesn't go to that individual. This way, we do this, mainly so that the individual can disseminate their direct dial if it's appropriate, but they don't just give it away by making a phone call. And in general, we want the business to be called back. That phone number belongs to the business.
No, that makes sense. Another question that came in was, most of my customers are international. Will this work for international as well?
Absolutely. International calling is available. Our carrier has a global network. I focused specifically on the North American network map previously, but they have points of presence throughout Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. They do indeed have a global network for calling, and there is virtually no place that's off limits.
So then, okay, if the phone is on the computer, is it possible to still have physical or like phones connected?
Absolutely. There are Teams-enabled desk phones that can be utilized if people need that receiver and that dial pad.
Oh, that sounds good.
Not required.
Right. I additionally too, like, are there solutions for board meeting or boardroom and meeting room setups where calls can be made by multiple people, or those not on staff with the company? So like, can clients use the phones to call out? How would that?
Absolutely. There are ways to license phones that are more common use for common area for your lobbies, your conference rooms, your kitchen, things like that. There are very nice conference room units. I jokingly, those Polycom Starfish phones that we're all used to sitting in the middle of the conference room table. There are versions of those that will run the Teams application and can participate in the Teams phone system. They even have the microphone extensions for those large boardroom tables, so you can get the people at the ends. They do have, the hardware is certainly kept up with the needs.
Well, I wouldn't have thought of that was a good question. I wouldn't have thought of clients needing to call at the or clients to use the phones to call out too. So, yep. Good question.
All right. Well, as this one, we've kind of been sitting on this one for a minute, but again, you have all of this is right here within your Teams client. So, some of the nice pieces though is because your phone number and your phone call is tied to you as your user, it can be made or you can participate in it from any place you have Teams installed that you are logged in. So, for example, I've run into this a number of times when I've been on the phone with a client and I need to continue to talk to them, but I have to go. So I can actually open up the Teams client on my smartphone, flip the call over to the Teams client on my smartphone, put the phone to my head, walk out of the office, go get in the car, hook it to my car's Bluetooth, and continue that conversation for my drive. And to be honest, the client or the caller doesn't even know I've done it. So it gives me a lot of flexibility in leveraging Teams wherever I have it to be able to engage in telephone calls. So
yeah,
here's just
Kevin, sorry, one question that did come in. You probably touched on it, but just like if everything comes to the cell phone, how does that, like, how exactly would that work?
Well, you would install the Teams app on your smartphone. So you'd have a separate app that's the Microsoft Teams app, just like a lot of us have Outlook installed in our smartphones. We can get our email there. You'd install Teams right out of the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and then you'd sign in with your normal Microsoft credentials. And then you have Teams on your laptop or your work computer, but you also have it on your smartphone, and you can choose where you use it. I mean, I've responded to more Teams messages than I can count from my smartphone app because it was convenient. So it really just comes down to wherever you have Teams installed or you're accessing Teams, you can leverage it for calling as well as chat, calendar, file share, all of those other things that Teams does. Now, file share on the smartphone is a little challenging, being honest. So I do want to step into just a couple of quick examples. These are some animated slides that just kind of give a quick example on how you can, leverage, for example, your Outlook contacts to make a telephone call. So if you want to call someone from your Outlook contacts in Teams, you go up here to the contacts, you click on the person, you click on the little phone icon, and it initiates the call. I mean, it's really that simple. I didn't have to go hunt for that person's phone number. I clicked on them and clicked the little phone icon. That's all that it took because I already had a contact built that had their phone number in it. If you're on a call and you need to put somebody on hold or transfer the call or anything like that, it's very straightforward. You come up to the little menu in the active call window and you have all of the options. You get to transfer your hold. All of that is right there. And then there's a big resume button to pick the call back up. Again, all of this is very straightforward. If you need to access your voicemail, now you can go to the calls tab, select the voicemail tab, and then once you select the voicemail, there's even a nice transcription where it transcribes what the caller said to text. You can hit play below to actually listen to the message, and then you have the ability to hit the little phone button to call them back. It makes it very convenient. I'm going to be very honest. I don't think I've listened to a voicemail message in probably a year. I just come in, read them, and then move and then return the phone call or action the item. I don't have to listen to the message anymore. Now, sometimes I'll be honest, that transcription engine it's good, but it's not perfect. There have been some that have been borderline comical that I've had to go in and listen to because I'm like, okay, I don't think they said that. But at the same time, most of the time, you can glean what's needed right out of just reading that voicemail message. So, and then of course, we have all of the basic functionality that people are used to. We have all of the there are different ways to transfer calls. You can transfer, just pitched over the fence and just send it to a coworker. You can consult with them ahead of time. You can transfer a call to somebody's mobile cell phone number if need be. So you can transfer a call off of the system if necessary. Of course, caller ID works for this system. Teams displays whatever the caller's carrier sends for caller ID information. If it sends name, Teams displays name. If it doesn't send name, phone number is displayed. And then, of course, you have all of your call history. I know some of my clients have been, billable by the hour. They can go through their history and look at how long they were on the phone with individual clients and get them into the billing package to ensure that that time is captured. There's plenty of reasons to leverage your call history depending on, a circumstance. And honestly, with that kind of leads me into a quick demonstration. I'm actually going to, we're going to roll the dice here and, the curse of the live demo. So this is my live Teams client. So please bear with me here. But as you can see, I have the dial pad. Here is the work telephone number that's assigned to me in Teams. The number in the slides is just forwarded. It is my number, and I will eventually replace it. But again, you'll see, my entire call history here, both internal and external. Voicemails are here, with full transcription. Again, if I just mouse over the voicemail, I get this call button. I can just return the call right there and then. I can even do some filters where I can, filter for every call I've had with this particular person or telephone number. So there's lots of different ways to leverage this. You can also customize the speed dial list with, various people that you interact with on a regular basis. If they're Teams users, you can even see their presence. I hear Mr. Barcroft's on, he's presenting as well right now. A few people are available in green and then a couple people are in red. And again, I can initiate a call right here. If I mouse over, I can even just send them a quick message just in the chat. So all of that is right here and can kind of be customized by you and for you based on who you interact with on a regular basis. Another nice thing about this is all of the call controls and user settings are right here within Teams. So if you needed to forward all of your calls to your cell phone, for example, you're going to be traveling to some place where the 4G, 5G is kind of spotty, there's no Wi-Fi, and you don't want to worry about it. Well, you forward all your calls to your cell phone, and it's just going to rely on the cellular network to get a hold of you that day. You can control how long it takes to go to voicemail. You can even customize your ringtones for various types of calls. Unfortunately, they don't allow you to upload custom, but you do have some, quite a variety here of various ringtones that you can, let me stop that you can listen to. Your voicemail greeting, you can record your voicemail greeting right here in the Teams client. So you can come in, it brings up the media recorder, you can speak with your own voice and record your voicemail greeting. Or if you're like me and prefer not to actually record that greeting, you can leverage the text-to-speech engine where you type in a greeting. And then the slightly robotic Microsoft lady reads this as my voicemail greeting. What I do like about this one is I can also configure this so that if my Outlook out of office replies are on, it plays a different message. I don't have to remember to record the I'm on vacation voicemail. I can just come in here and have a generic I'm on vacation message typed, and I don't have to worry about turning it on. I just have to make sure my out of office and Outlook is set, which is kind of a requirement nowadays. And Teams will pick that up and automatically play that message for me. There's also some nice functionality. For example, if you are, there's a way to name a delegate where that delegate will also get your telephone calls. I see this a lot in that executive and assistant relationship where the assistant takes most of the executive's calls. Well, that executive can name the assistant as a delegate, and anytime that executive's number is called or a call's transferred to the executive, it also rings to their assistant. And that assistant can even customize their ringtones so that a delegated call rings differently, so they know that it's a call for that executive and to answer it in an appropriate manner. So all of this is right here within the Teams client. Again, you don't have to leave the Teams client to deal with any of this. So again, it really does enable that productivity because you're in one app that you get comfortable with, you know where things are, you can move around and manipulate it. So now I do want to move on some of the quick wins, as I've been kind of hounding on here, everything stays within Teams, one of the big things. And there's some nice click to dial functionality as well, not only from that voicemail, not only from the Teams client, but Windows has a protocol called the TEL protocol built in. And if you click on a phone number, pretty much anywhere, whether it's a website, whether it's in your email, the TEL protocol will often kick in as long as your computer recognizes it as a phone number. And you'll get a pop. You click on a phone number in Outlook, you get a pop-up. Do you want to make this call in Teams? You click yes, and it makes the phone call for you. I mean, the idea of actually typing in a telephone number is becoming antiquated. We're calling by name or clicking or copying and pasting. Very rarely do I actually use that dial pad to actually plug in a number. Most of the time, I'm clicking somewhere. I mentioned this earlier, transferring calls between devices that run Teams. I mean, flip that call to your cell phone because you've got to go to the next appointment. You have that ability to, and then you get back, take that call while you're coming back from your lunch, you sit down at your desk, you can flip it back to your desktop and continue that conversation. And another nice thing, there's no need to give out your cell number anymore. You can install the Teams client on your cell phone, and now your work number stays with you on your Teams client. You don't have to give that cell number out. They call your work number, your cell phone app rings also. So you can take that call whenever. And with that said, there's some very nice features within the app that's called either quiet time or quiet hours, depending on whether you're Apple or Android. Of course, they had to name it differently. But you can schedule times when your notifications in Teams are muted on the smartphone app. So if somebody calls your Teams number at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, your phone is not ringing on your nightstand waking up your spouse. You can silence those ringers so you can preserve that work-life balance, and you can really customize that. You can even name VIPs that bypass those. So you have a lot of options there. You also can record calls ad hoc. You can click the record button at any time during a Teams call and start to record that call. Now, fair warning, because Microsoft doesn't know where everybody sits as far as what state or province or country they're in, they go to the most broad form of reporting, which is two-party notification. So as soon as you hit that record button to both you and your caller, you get an automated message that says this call is now being recorded. So it's one of those things to be cautious using. You don't want to kick it on halfway through an angry rant from a customer. But at the same time, you do have the ability to record those calls, for compliance purpose, for review purposes, storage in your CRM software, things of that nature. And then again, we already talked about the out of office voicemail greeting. So there's a lot of productivity, quick things that you can do to really kind of make things more convenient, to leverage that phone system so it's there for you when you need it and it's not pestering you all the time when it's not.
Totally. Kevin, one of the questions is if we run a call center and the integration of caller data from our phone systems into the database is essential, is it possible, or is this something that's possible in Teams?
Likely, yes. Microsoft maintains a very powerful API into Teams. We just have to see if the integration between your CRM platform and Teams has already been created or whether that's a custom development job. But more than likely, it's possible. Just the level of effort may vary dramatically depending on whether it has already been built or you're the pioneer.
Cool. If the team works on a remote desktop application, will the Teams phone be on the remote server, or would it need to be outside the remote desktop application?
In general, I prefer to keep it local only because of latency concerns and call quality issues. I have actually seen some fair amount of success with Teams calling over RDP, but it's a little dicey, and I'd prefer to run Teams locally in that instance. for a better quality of experience for the user. Any other ones, Brill?
I think that's
Okay.
good for now. Yeah, we can keep
All right.
going.
Now I'm going to move on to some of the additional functionality and additional add-ons for Teams. Now, all the stuff that I'm going to go through next, I'm being very blunt and very honest, does come with an additional cost. It's not baked into the vanilla Teams calling platform, but there's a lot of things that can be leveraged for insights and better communication that I do want to at least talk about, that I do have clients leveraging and using. A lot of these come because we have partnered with a carrier that specializes in Teams integration. So one of the things that I've had a number of clients leverage is SMS or text right within Teams. You actually can add an app that has a text icon right here in your Teams client and allow you to send text messages to and from cell phones on your Teams client using your keyboard. So again, that earlier example of that nonprofit that works with low income and disadvantaged people, and they found that texting was a very effective method of communicating with their clientele. So again, it's not for everybody. I mean, I don't think that text will ever be adopted as a formal business mode of communication, but it does have its use. It does have its purpose, especially if part of your business is to deal with the general public. Texting may have some advantages to you and may be a good mode of communication. So this is something that can be added to individualized users, quite literally on a user by user basis, based on whether they would leverage it or not. But I have some clients that don't use it at all. I have some clients that use it every single day, all day long. So it is something that can be brought into the Teams application. The next thing I want to touch on is some of the analytics. Microsoft Teams does have some basic analytics. They can pull some basic call reports, give you some basic idea of when you get calls and how many calls you got. But to really get granular, or certainly to get real-time information, you need to look to a third party or some kind of additional analytics functionality. So we have an advanced analytics engine that is, again, provided by our carrier partner that can bring up real-time dashboards of what's going on with a call queue or a subset of your calling or all of your calling. So you can build these various dashboards. I have a couple of clients that have these up on a TV on the wall in the small call center that they maintain, so that the people can see what's going on. Hey, are we winning? Are we not? Do we need to hurry this along? Are we getting buried? What's going on there? The managers have a broader view of how many calls do we have coming in, where are we at with our average durations, looking through the metrics at a slightly higher level. And then the analytics engine has the ability to pull together and build charts and graphs that manager can then use as example as part of a presentation during a staffing discussion with ownership. Hey, looks like every Tuesday we get hammered from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We need to staff up during that time, because otherwise we're starting to get more and more complaints about call answering time. So you can really leverage these analytics to start looking at what are our call patterns, and when do we need to have our staff available? When are some of the downtimes? Where can we schedule light? And then once you've started to kind of pull that all together, you can start to build actually reports within this analytics engine that are very, very powerful and can be delivered to you daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, however often you'd like, right via email, where they just run for you automatically and just pop into your inbox. So you can kind of maintain that structure and that visibility into how the calling has been flowing through your business week in, week out. So again, these are all add-ons. These do cost extra money. I'm not here to put on the big giant sales pitch for all the extra stuff, but there are some really powerful tools available for Teams calling that don't come directly from Microsoft or aren't included in that vanilla package. The last one I want to touch on real quick is, I've mentioned some companies are under a compliance requirement for recording, where we can actually engage and enable in a compliance recording engine that records all calls for a particular set of users. Those calls can then be flagged and categorized. We can have different retention policies. This recording engine also does allow for the whisper, barge, and takeover of a manager. So for training purposes, the manager can listen in live on the call. They can whisper to the agent. They can actually take over the call if it's really going south. So they have that capability right built into the compliance engine. And then, of course, the ad hoc recording is available, but this requires user interaction. This compliance recording is done automatically on the back end. The user doesn't have to do anything. Whereas with the ad hoc recording, the user actually does have to come in and actually start a recording. There's a big announcement. Again, it's effective, but it is one of those where the user has to remember to do that. And then that recording is tucked into their OneDrive. That's where it's saved. And so then that user has to be trained to put it somewhere else if it's going to be kept for more of a centralized repository. So we honestly got through that a little bit faster than I expected here, guys. We're at the end, so I want to open the floor to questions, concerns, comments. Please, if you can't tell, I do really like this stuff, and I would be happy to engage with you on anything that you'd like to know more about.
I don't think anybody's ever complained about getting out of a meeting earlier. I haven't anyways. But one thing, Kevin, I don't know if you just wanted to touch on like what types of businesses do you think can use the standard Teams calling reporting versus like when would it actually be necessary to get that advanced analytics?
But if you're looking to, if you have a high volume of calls and at least some of your staff are going to be measured based on their response to those calls, if you want to be able to glean that information on, ebbs and flows of the number of calls you receive, that's when I would look at the advanced analytics. If you're going to be making, staffing, hiring, firing, promotion, demotion decisions based on somebody's participation in your phone system, you really ought to have the advanced analytics engine so you can really get granular with that information. If you're not going to be grading people based on their participation in the phone system, then the advanced analytics probably isn't necessary for you.
One question that came into is, I want to know how this compares to the go-to phone system.
There's some similarities there. They're both cloud hosted. They both are app driven for the most part. I've actually taken, about a handful of customers off of GoTo and onto Rome, our Teams calling solution, in the last year or two. And in general, I get the most recent feedback I got was that the QoS or call quality was significantly better in Teams because Teams does use a more efficient protocol than GoTo does, or GoTo does. And then that the user interface for transferring and things like that was more convenient. On top of that, it's also one less app to maintain. That GoTo has its own separate app that has to be dealt with, updated, kept usable, as well as you're already doing that for Teams anyway. So folding things into Teams just often will make a lot of sense for people. And pricing is comparable. It did not seem like the GoTo and the Teams phone product were priced very differently. A $1 or $2 here or there, but I mean, they were very comparable.
And then also, what is the cost?
The cost can vary based on, honestly, the country you live in. But there's Microsoft licensing. There is a seat for our carrier, and then there's a fee to implement for that white glove implementation service. And honestly, that's something that, it's very comparable to a seat of your standard hosted system. But that's something I'd like to discuss with individuals on a case-by-case basis. Let's unearth and discover their needs. Make sure that we're talking about costs appropriate to them with the appropriate licensing, the appropriate features and functionality. But again, it's a very comparable cost model to your go-tos, your Comcast Business Voice Edge, your more the standard hosted phone systems that are very prevalent across the country. It's priced very comparably to those.
Cool, sounds good. How much training do you recommend for most staff users who are not used to this type of system, but the more traditional phone systems? Is it something that Convergence does, or is this the carrier that provides the training?
No, we provide the training. In fact, I am still the trainer, and that is one of the things that Convergence is going to have to pry off my cold, dead hands. I feel I'm a very good trainer. I've been doing it for a long, long time, and I schedule 60-minute training sessions with my clientele, and I try to keep those trainings to somewhere between 15 to 20 participants. So depending on the number of staff you have, we may schedule 3, 4, 5, 6 training sessions. I've learned the hard way that the smaller the group, the more questions get asked, the more comfortable people are with speaking up. And I've learned the hard way that if I don't hold people's hand and really make sure to get them very comfortable with the system, the number of calls generated to our help desk for questions and assistance skyrockets. And so I insist on training. In fact, I had to turn a client away who wouldn't let me train their staff. I said, well, then I won't install your system. That's how important I feel that it is.
Awesome. That's all we have for questions, Kevin. So I think if anybody wants to book a demo with Kevin, I know he's always ready to do them. He loves Teams phones, but please reach out to your account manager, your customer success manager, your BCIO to schedule time. And Kevin will help you out. If you have any other questions, feel free to email Kevin as well. I think Kevin, hey, or you could call 517-999-MEEK.
Absolutely. I will answer that phone. That worst case, if you leave me a message, I really do still believe in voicemail, and I will listen to it and return your call. I'm waiting for my phone to start ringing here with somebody testing it, but but yes, please, reach out to your PCIO, your account manager, your CSM. We'd love to sit down and talk to you about how you and your company could leverage Teams calling. Make sure it's going to be a good fit for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. A recording, we'll make sure we send a recording out tomorrow at the latest, along with the slide deck that Kevin put together. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for attending.